Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I am your host, Richie, here in beautiful St. Cloud, Florida. With me, one of my two co-hosts, my man, Mr. Mike Zappy. I believe he's in San Antonio, Texas, but with the darkness, Blair Witch look, I'm going to go with parts unknown.
It's to be determined because since this is the final weekend of no football, I figured I'd go on a complete hiatus.
Be careful, because it didn't work for Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I'm not going to be playing on Monday Night Football, so I think I'm good.
Yeah, in retrospect, maybe he should have done the psychedelics before the game. I heard it was frowned upon. On tonight's show, we're going to be speaking about the implosion that is the New York Yankees bullpen squandering yet another very winnable game in Fenway against their most hated rivals, the Boston Red Sox. We're going to talk about the ascending New York Mets. Zappy's Rangers have been a lot better lately. We're going to hit on them. But today, the big story, undeniably, Zappy, the quarterbacks, man. Quarterbacks making some money.
Yeah, man. We knew it was coming because it's the start of training camp, and this is usually when these big deals get done. And we saw Tua get his, and it started a chain reaction. And we see Jordan Love get his, and now the big question is, will Dak get his from Dallas, or is he getting it from somewhere else? And honestly, based on what I'm hearing, the way Dak had his press conference today and the way I see Jerry Jones sounding like Biden, I think Dak's getting it from somewhere else.
I have a team in mind, and we're going to elaborate on that during our football segment. I also have a cool little comparison of two rather young quarterbacks that had their first full years as starters last year. Going to be a fun show. Enjoy this intro, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast on YouTube. Making a point to subscribe. Zap, were you surprised, or are you just kind of expecting these massive salaries that these quarterbacks are getting?
I mean, the surprising part about it all is when you look at the contracts that Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, and Lamar Jackson, all these quarterbacks that have gotten, the one commonality they all have is none of them have won a Super Bowl. And I think between all those quarterbacks together, they only have a handful of playoff wins. But we see what's going on post-COVID. We saw how the salary cap took a dip, and now it's recovered. And now the market has exploded for the quarterback and the wide receiver position because of the new NFL we're in. But, it's funny, we talk about this. We're going to look at these contracts 2-3 years from now, and they're going to be mediocre as we continue to see the salary cap go up. And, as I tried explaining to some people, when you're talking about a quarterback contract, the goal is not to look at the numbers, but rather the percentage of the cap. And the goal is always to be at the 16 to 20% of the cap that should be allocated towards your quarterback once they're on their second contract. And when you really break it down between everything that what Tua got today and what Jordan Love got today, they're right there at that threshold. The only difference between the Packers and the Dolphins is they don't have multiple players under large contracts like that of the 49ers and the Cowboys, who are the two teams that are up next, are going to have to make some big decisions. And we see the Niners right now in a predicament. Are they going to pay Ayuk, or can they pay him? We know it's either Debo or Ayuk. We just don't know which one they're going to keep, because they're going to give Brock Purdy the $60 million at least. And Dak, I just can't see Dallas paying $130 million at a minimum to three guys. We saw the last team that did that allocated half their salary cap towards three guys was the Lions, when they were doing it with Matthew Stafford, Calvin Johnson, and Ndamukong Suh. And what did it get them? One playoff win. So I'm not surprised about it at all. But like I said earlier to my buddy Brandon, it's, these contracts, the $55 million is the threshold. We're going to see Dak and Purdy get more, and then we're going to see Mahomes jump in and get probably 61.5 to 62.5 a year.
It's going to be that extra half of whatever mil it is, because of the fact that he's the face of the league. And, it's just a status thing that the Chiefs are going to make sure that for a decent amount of years, he is that guy. Jordan Love, man. Let's start with Tua, then we'll hit on Love. I'm happy for Tua because of how much he's been through. I myself am a little partial, a little biased against left-handed quarterbacks. Kind of like I'm biased against left-handed fighters. I feel like they do everything a little backwards. I mean, and mind you, I'm left-handed. I'm moderately ambi. I write with my left hand. I shoot a ball with my right hand. Throw righty, bat lefty. Moderately ambi. Not as ambi as my guy Noah. But when you look at the success rate of left-handed quarterbacks in this league that have won it all, Steve Young.
The key word is won it all. So, yeah.
Steve Young. I'm not trying to disrespect some of the great talents in this league that happen to be left-handed, but there is something to that. Mark Brunell had some great years, never did it. He got close. Michael Vick had a couple of good teams in Atlanta. He also had one particular good team in Philly that Green Bay snubbed out. Just kind of going through a mental Rolodex of some notable left-handed quarterbacks. But to my recollection and knowledge, Steve Young is the only left-handed quarterback to win it all. And I'm not fact-checking, so if I'm wrong, I'm going to look it up, and I'll apologize tomorrow when the show airs. But, to my recollection, Zappy, it's Steve Young.
Right. And, and I am happy for Tua, because we saw what he went through. We saw him on the field motionless against the Cincinnati Bengals. We saw him
very scary.
Yeah. And we thought his career was over. We were saying he needs to call it quits. He came back, proved it. He played a 17-game season last year, got the team to the playoffs. Unfortunately, they had to go into the friendly confines of frigid Kansas City. But nevertheless, he's a guy that he put in the work. He deserves it. This is a team that before they drafted him, it was the whole tank for Tua. They technically did, but didn't, and still ended up with him. And now they're rewarding him with a deal. They're loading up the weapons around him, bringing in a guy like OBJ. You have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. You have Raheem Mostert. You have Devon Etienne coming into his second season. They have all the pieces there. Now, as far as Tua goes, you've got to do more in the playoffs to justify getting $53.1 million a year.
They got to get a home game. They got to get a home game, because let's be real, dude. This team led by Mike McDaniel, and even prior to them led by Brian Flores, has not been able to win that big game on the road that would change their fortune. Under Flores, they had winning teams that just missed the playoffs. And with McDaniel, they've had the instant out. 2 years ago in Buffalo, a little more forgivable because they were rolling with Skylar Thompson. This year, just to your point, a South Florida team going into Arrowhead Stadium in that kind of weather. It was tailor-made for the Chiefs to do what they did. And, that wonderful running game that saw Raheem Mostert tie the ultimate running back, Christian McCaffrey, in total touchdowns. He labored down the stretch. His running mate, Achan, was injured at different junctures of the year. Their defense is going to be good this year, though. Their defense is going to be good this year, but their squandered opportunity truly was the previous week when they lost to the Buffalo Bills in Miami, losing the division title. That's what really did Miami in my opinion. And also, if you want to take it back earlier last year, that controversial loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, which saw the Eagles not get penalized once. I don't think I ever saw an NFL game, a high school game, a college game, a peewee game, where one team was not penalized the entire game.
And I could understand if it was something like what we saw in the Super Bowl this year with very minimal penalties.
Yeah.
If it was called equally, but the Dolphins that game had, I got 12 or 17.
I think it was 13, anywhere between 13 and 16, 17, something in that neighborhood. But It was tilted. The seesaw was busted. That was a weird one. But getting back to center about these quarterbacks, I guess my question to you, Zappy, before we talk about the man in Green Bay, do you believe that this particular Miami team, which may be a make or break year for Mike McDaniel, because obviously their Tua is safe for a while. This is Tyreek Hill's final contract probably because he's talking about retiring early. OBJ's on his last leg, but this could be reinvigorating. Jalen Waddle, he's playing for more money in the near future. This could be Mostert's last chance to win a bowl. Do you think they have enough to shake the tree of the Kansas City Chiefs and the next great team, potentially the Baltimore Ravens?
I will turn it back on you and say this. Before we even talk about them being able to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs or be able to take down the two-time MVP in Lamar Jackson, it's a matter of can they take down the Buffalo Bills?
Good point. Because were it not for some funky special teams play and basically heat exhaustion, which was 2 Septembers ago, the Dolphins have not been able to do much against the Bills. They had a spirited effort with Skylar Thompson, a game I actually thought they were going to pull off. Buffalo ultimately got cut up by the combination of Higgins and Chase the next week. But Buffalo that particular year, with the DeMar Hamlin stuff, definitely was a really weird situation where I don't think they were completely in football mode at that point. Plus, they weren't that good. The defense was busted up. You got to think they're a little vulnerable, right? No Steph Diggs. The defense is still a question mark.
That's what I was going to say. Buffalo is still the head honcho of that division. But if there's ever a year to beat Buffalo, it's this year, because next year and the following year, they're going to be one of the top AFC teams again, especially once the guys like Keon Coleman comes into his own.
Yes, FSU product, going to be a good player. And Shakir, their slot man, definitely built up a nice little rapport with quarterback Josh Allen. What I like about this roster on the offensive side is I think this is the year where James Cook turns into potentially a top 5 back, more than likely a top 10 guy. But I think he's going to ascend into that next realm of his career, which essentially is going to be the beginning of his prime. He showed me a lot last year on certain Sundays, particularly against your Cowboys. He had one of his better games of his career. I don't know if he'll ever be as good as his older brother Dalvin when Dalvin was at his peak, but James Cook is definitely an ascending player. I think ultimately it still comes down to that defense in Buffalo. Guys that you're investing a lot in have to step up, have to stay on the field. Guys like Von Miller, guys like Matt Milano, those are guys that got to stay on the field.
Yeah, and and I'm going to answer your question. Even though the Dolphins, it looks great on paper, It really does. But quite frankly, when you look at their schedule, I already talked about this team has the opportunity to start off 6-0, has an opportunity to go be 8-2 until that definitely stretch of the last 6-7 games. I don't think they're going to be able to do it because of the simple fact that if they cannot have those home games, they cannot go into cold places. We're talking about a quarterback that all he has done his entire life is play in beautiful weather, from playing high school football in Hawaii, college football in Alabama, and now playing in Miami, Florida. I mean, and really, this has been the Dolphins' issue since 1983, the last time when Marino made a promise, and
You're
sorry,
not
it never
lying,
happened.
Zappy. You're not lying, because as a kid coming up in the 80s and 90s, a great era of professional football, we saw some great quarterback play with Marino and Kelly, two of the best quarterbacks to not win a Super Bowl, 5 losses between the two of them. But Buffalo had their number in that era. No fault of Marino in my eyes when I think about the defenses that he didn't have until he was wearing a knee brace. But yeah, you make a great point, dude. Basically, for the entirety of both our lives, the Miami Dolphins have not been able to get it done in cold weather. And let's say, hypothetically, if they got to be a visitor somewhere, they're going to be praying that, like, the Texans are the team that they go visit. That could be a feasible task should the Texans, or maybe if Jacksonville surprises people and you get an interstate game, going to Duval versus Miami. I don't think it's that big of a difference in that regard. Plus, the boys in Duval in recent times, although having okay seasons, have struggled at home. So it's something to keep an eye on. Jordan Love, man, replacing 4-time league MVP Aaron Rodgers. He became a full-time starter this past year. Were it not for a couple of poor kicks and one particularly bad pass, the Green Bay Packers could have very well played their division rival Detroit Lions in last year's NFC title game. And that could have been something because they split. I guess what I'm getting at is the Packers are kind of close. Jordan Love is a very rich man. I think paid to the point where Mr. Rogers might want to go back into his bit of a darkness retreat. Not that I'm saying that Rogers would hate on the kid, but it's a lot fast. It happened fast, and Green Bay has been blessed pretty much since John Olsen was in the building when Don Magic Man Majowski had a career-altering injury. Enter number 4, mainly unknown Brett Favre. Rodgers sits for 3 seasons. Rodgers, in Favre's footsteps, outdoes him by 1 league MVP. Now you have Jordan Love, a guy who's already beaten Patrick Mahomes once, played him twice, the one time that Rodgers didn't play during that Love era as a backup because of COVID. So they're 1-1 head-to-head. A dubious game last year against the Italian stallion Tommy DeVito, but I'm not going to blame that. I am going to blame that on poor quarterback play. But I guess my ultimate question is, we know that the quarterback's the most important position in today's NFL, but do you feel that this all started with that egregious Deshaun Watson deal? Because I know I've told Giant fans that are pissed about DJ's money that Deshaun Watson deal set the precedent that this shit was going to go up and up and up.
I mean, it was a huge reason why. And with the Deshaun Watson deal, it was more along the lines of the guaranteed money rather than the total value of the contract. Because when you're giving someone, what was it, $254 million fully guaranteed, or 243, whatever, like, that's a lot. And that's a lot for a guy that had not played a snap in over 700 days.
Indeed. And it definitely busted up the market and got some people's feelings hurt, because you mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. 2-time league MVP Lamar Jackson. At the time, he was a 1-time league MVP. He's the reigning MVP right now. That dude was like, went to the Ravens and was like, is this real? And you and I both looked at the possibility that Lamar was going to leave, and it almost happened until they made him happy enough, but and he rewarded the franchise with getting a MVP, and In my opinion, were it not for some rookie mistakes from Zay Flowers, one particularly bad pass from Lamar, and honestly, just Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid together out coaching Baltimore's coaches, um, the better team did not win that game, but the Chiefs were the best coached and best prepared team.
That was the story of the Chiefs playoff run. The better team did not win every time the Chiefs won.
With the exception of the aforementioned Miami fish freeze. That was, man, oh man. There were fatalities of fans that attended that event. That was no joke.
No joke.
That weather was no joke, dude. But what would possess anybody to go shirtless?
Right. And I will say this, like we said, Tua got his. Jordan Love followed it up with a 4-year, 220, $55 million per. I have an easier time justifying paying Tua the 53 than I do paying Jordan the 55. Reason being is Jordan, he had to sit back. He had to learn. We saw how he looked his first start against the Chiefs, and it looked horrible.
Certainly.
It looked really bad. And even in the early stages of this past season, Jordan Love didn't look like he was going to be the answer. But then
it was a lot of up and down. And in a very young career, that Monday Night Football game against the Giants, which I actually thought was going to seal Green Bay's fate, they ended up sneaking in and having a little run. That was his worst game as a professional in his young career. Now, the swirling winds of the Meadowlands can be adverse for quarterbacks. That is well documented. But having said that, that was a weird one. Special teams, mistakes galore on both teams. Saquon Barkley did something very uncharacteristic. He tripped over the turf monster, which he assumed was a Packer leg or a Packer limb, just walked away from the football, and the Green Bay Packers recovered it. Ultimately, Tommy DeVito had his 15 minutes of fame, which I think is awesome, the local kid. But, the Packers responded after that loss. That was their last loss prior to their playoff loss. And as I said, they had the Niners on the ropes. So it's going to be interesting, but it's a lot at one time. And I have a cool little metric here. I'm going to ask you to maybe put your camera off for a moment so that way this thing isn't covering both our dome pieces. Let me see how this looks first. Going to hit my camera off for just a moment. Something that I'm a member of a lot of football pages. So I ran into this, and I thought it was really cool. I think I hit the wrong one. Just bear with me. I know what I did. I got to get it as an image. Here we go. Boom. All right. These are the metrics between these two young quarterbacks. Mr. Stroud, who was a natural rookie, versus Mr. Love, who was essentially a rookie, but to your point, sat behind a phenomenal quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. As you see, the completion percentage is rather similar. The passing yards are incredibly similar. The touchdown to interception ratio is similar, but we also have to take into account that CJ runs a little bit more than Love. So if we're talking total touchdowns, it's a little closer. Passer rating, pretty close, slightly on the favor of Mr. Stroud. The team's point per game's almost identical. Why am I bringing this up? Well, for one, I thought it was a cool debate because I myself, while I am a fan of both players, I do feel that there's a bit of a narrative push that's maybe putting Mr. Stroud just a little bit ahead before his time. Whereas if I'm going to give Love an upper hand in this matter, I do think you have to take into consideration that Love had more unknowns throwing on offense, or at least I think he did. And he also plays in inclement weather and in a tougher environment in, Wisconsin, Chicago, places like that. And similar to Tua struggling, now Stroud, gets a pass. He's a young dude. Stroud had a hell of a time getting into his rhythm in Baltimore, another frigid place in January, February, the playoffs. So I guess what I'm asking you is, do you think this is a little bit narrative driven, why Jordan Love isn't being talked about more? Or do you think it has more to do with the fact that Stroud is a natural rookie? And to your point, Love kind of sat a while.
So I'm going to say that I think there's no narrative whatsoever. I think Jordan Love is not the better quarterback for a few reasons. One, you look at the touchdown interception ratio. You're talking about 3-1 by Jordan Love, 4-1 by CJ Stroud. When we talk about Houston and Green Bay this past season, before the season started, we all expected Houston to be a 3-4 win team back in the top 10 drafting. And as far as the Packers go, there was mixed emotions about this team. Hey, some of us thought that they could be a winning team. Some of us thought they'd be a fourth place team. And when you look at what you have at receivers with both teams, I mean, Christian Watson was drafted very high to be that guy. Romeo Doubs was also drafted higher. And then when you look at what the Texans have, they didn't have John Mechie this past season. He still has yet to really play much. And then Nico Collins has come into his own. But, there was that whole CJ Stroud's another Ohio State quarterback. And we have seen time and time again that Ohio State quarterbacks do not succeed in the NFL. And not to mention, you had a rookie coach come in with Houston, as well as a rookie defensive end. All the things pointed to Jordan Love should have the better seasons because, I mean, when you really look at it, you have A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones that they're supposed to take the load off of Jordan Love. Me personally, I think when you're comparing the two quarterbacks, as you see, they both have 9 wins in their young seasons. However, one of them is a rookie. The other one is not quite. While technically speaking, it would be his rookie season because of playing. This is not the NBA. This is the NFL. And when you talk about the years for Jordan Love, he is a veteran. So he needed that time to develop where CJ Stroud jumped on the scene. Now, if we look at CJ Stroud 4 years from now, and if he is just blowing it up, whereas Jordan Love is, we'll say right there, I'm still going to give the edge to CJ because he did it from the get-go.
Now, if you are Houston management, fans, personnel, people, teammates, etc., that have a vested interest in this Houston team, are you fearful that with bringing in a strong personality like a Stephon Diggs, who you would think for a short while is going to be the main feature of the receivers, the long picture, the big picture features the other two men? But I guess what I'm saying is, are you concerned in any way, shape, or form of a sophomore slump or sophomore adversity for Stroud?
I'm concerned with the sophomore adversity, but that's the reason why you go out and bring in a Joe Mixon to team up with Dameon Pierce.
Good point. Very good point.
And when I look at the receiving core between Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell, I don't think Diggs is coming in is going to be the number 1. And I think he might be the number 2 for a short period of time because honestly, Nico Collins today at this point in their careers, Nico, I trust more because he's younger, he's faster. Whereas Stephon, he has taken a huge step back, and we saw him take a huge step back last year where he was dropping critical passes in the playoffs. So, I mean, personally, the only thing that worries me with bringing in a Stephon Diggs is we know how he gets when things are not going right. His mouth starts to open.
There is a selfishness.
Yes.
That does.
But
he
ran
himself out of Minnesota. He wore himself out of Buffalo.
Exactly. But I will say this. He's now playing for a head coach that's not going to stand for that. And really, when you look at Houston, what if DeMeco Ryans decides, look, man, it's just not enough. We don't need you. Then they part ways after this year. So really, it's not a lose-lose situation for them. It's a win-win. If Stephon does well, then great, they do well. If he doesn't, then they part ways and move on, and they still have a young receiving core. And that's not even mentioning the likes of Dalton Schultz. They're starting.
Yeah, one of the better tight ends that in the fantasy realm could definitely surprisingly ascend into the top 5 through 7. I think he's capable. He showed some glimmers of that back with your team as well.
Yeah, but the big difference with this year and last year obviously is now teams have a whole off season. There's a whole season of film on CJ Stroud. Same can be said about Jordan Love. And I've already said that, I wouldn't be surprised if the Houston Texans, because of their schedule, they have a brutal schedule. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were the second place finisher in the South, but still get into the playoffs. Because I do think that
Yeah, I think that's a feasible thing. Who would you have? And it's too early. Our previews are coming up in a few weeks yet, but who would be your team that is most likely to jump Houston if there is a team that's going to do it? Are you
it would
feeling Jacksonville or are you
Jacksonville.
feeling?
Yeah, it'd be Jacksonville because we saw what they did in the offseason. They got better. When you look at
I
what they
think they
did
did.
on the defensive front, bringing in a guy like Arik Armstead is going to help out their young, second-year defensive end. It's going to help out Josh Allen. It's going to help out. Then you bring in Gabe Davis, who's a good veteran, but he's a guy that's been there before. And and if Tank Bigsby can become that second running back, they're going to be fine. Jaguars started off hot last year, but then fell off. I don't expect that from them this year. I think
The
this is a team.
Lawrence injury kind of correlated with that because I particularly remember this game. I think we were speaking that night too when Jake Browning came in for an injured Joe Burrow and got a big W in Duval, and that
Exactly.
kind of started the spiral out of control for the Jaguars. And I got news for you. I think if Browning would have just had a couple more games, even without the great Joe Burrow, I think Cincinnati could have gotten the playoffs.
I mean, I've already told you that I think Cincinnati is going to be the team that wins the North this year, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Joe Burrow, for the first time in his career, is healthy, and they just barely missed the playoffs. And now we're talking about a team that, hey, yeah, they moved on from Mixon, but they brought in a younger guy in Zach Moss. They addressed the offensive line by drafting Amarius Mims and bringing in Brown. They have T. Higgins back for this.
Brown is an intriguing one given his Canadian football background. He's definitely going to be in steady competition with Moss, but I think Moss has the upper hand for the long haul because of what he does. I think immediately it'll be Brown. I wanted to elaborate on your point that you made about Joe Mixon, and I'm also going to talk about why Love is in a nice situation as well. Joe Mixon has been literally the definition of consistency. I don't particularly think he does anything excellent, but he does everything good. And I think with this particular offense, I mean, we saw Devin Singletary, newly acquired New York Giant, shine in this offense, taking snaps away from Pierce. Now you get a consistent top 5 to 6 guy who is always under the radar. Nobody talks about Joe Mixon like they talk about CMC or they talk about Saquon Barkley or Alvin Kamara prior to his recent decline. The Derrick Henrys of the world, that caliber running back. But I think the Texans, by grabbing 2 legit veterans, are actually in a wonderful position to just really enhance things. Wrapping up this Stroud and
And it's not even that, not even those 2 veterans. Don't forget about the veteran and Danielle Hunter they brought on the defensive side to team up with Will Anderson. That's a huge addition right there for them.
but final thought on Stroud versus Love. I think you make the righteous points about Stroud coming in right away. It's like the same way if we're comparing Kobe and you and Idris's favorite, Mr. James. You're not going to like me for this, but LeBron did hit the ground running, whereas Kobe had to be cultivated. Different sport, not the same thing all the way. Just always playing devil's advocate to a level. Believe me, you know who I like better out of those 2. Rest in peace, number 8, number 24. But back to these quarterbacks, last thing. They both inherit an awesome running back. Josh Jacobs, nice addition. I was disappointed with the Green Bay Packers for not rewarding Aaron Jones for just being an exceptional human. You lose him to division rival Minnesota. And I'm going to say this. Aaron Jones is going to have a bounce-back year with a Viking team that's going to need to run the ball to take pressure off of young quarterback J.J. McCarthy. I'm also going to go on record and say this. Sam Darnold will start the season as their quarterback, in my opinion. to kind of get McCarthy up to speed. But if the Vikings get off to a slow start, you will see McCarthy by Halloween, if not sooner. Good stuff, man. This was a cool little quarterback segment. I like this. Not bad at all. Anything else you want to hit on NFL related before we move it along to some deadline deals and some angry feels?
No, just it's a beautiful thing to see on NFL Network or whatever streaming platform anyone likes to use, but to see the fights happening amongst teammates. Football is back. Football is literally back next Thursday with the Hall of Fame game. We're going to see the Hall of Fame.
I know. I can't believe it. I literally can't believe it's that close. And guess what, everyone? Our divisional previews are coming up very soon. Zappy and I are definitely going to talk about that off air when we're done doing this here. So, all right. I think we're ready to move along to MLB. I'm going to start with this because I want to make it short and sweet because it hurts. The Yankees bullpen implodes again, wasting back-to-back bombs from Aaron Judge and catcher Austin Wells. Clay Holmes can't get the long save with a failed assist from Luke Weaver. Weaver took the loss. And the Red Sox win 9-7 and improve to 5-2 versus my beloved Yankees. Will the Yankees make a deal for some bullpen help? Stanton likely to return against Philadelphia, which is coming up on Monday. Nasty Nestor Cortez was not good. Neither was Brian Bello, for that matter. I kind of expected a lot of runs in this one. But when Judge blasted that one and then back-to-back with Wells, I thought the Yankees were going to win this one. And I'll tell you.
It was 7-4. They should have won it.
Yeah, you needed 9 outs. You're up 7-4. This is my bottom line here. Pretenders find ways to lose in baseball during this second half, and you see it year in and year out. Contenders find ways to win. And, momentum's a real thing in any sport. But basically, since the 15th of June, after winning that game against the Red Sox in impressive fashion in the same venue, the Yankees have not been right. I don't know if it's a mental thing playing Boston lately. I don't know. It's a little bit of everything. Giancarlo Stanton was invaluable the first half of the year, given extra protection to Juan Soto as well as Aaron Judge. I look for bright spots. Anthony Volpe, after a bad slump, has been hitting much better. Alex Verdugo, earlier in the year, I said, this guy's a shoo-in to come back. Now I'm not sure. I know what I want to do. I want Tanner Scott. I want Jazz Chisholm. And I want them to figure out what they need, and let's make it happen. Just don't get rid of Spencer Jones. I don't think we're going to do that, but we need some bullpen help.
And it's an unfortunate thing because I thought Mason Miller was on a one-way flight to New York.
As did I.
And now when you hear about him breaking his finger because he punched the bench yesterday, it's like, all right, back to the drawing board. And then you look at teams like Texas, who were believed to be stellars just even a week ago. And now Chris Young has come out today and said they are going to be buyers. The Texas Rangers had a lot of bullpen help that could have helped out the Yankees. So, it's
pretty wacky how these things happen, go figure. You didn't do your due diligence to realize that Montez was dinged up and you got damaged goods. The same Oakland Athletics gave him up. And then you're like salivating at the thought of getting Miller, and then this happens.
I think they've got to put all their chips in to go after Croquet of the White Sox. I really do. Because, you put him into your rotation and you put Nestor as your long reliever, something like that. I think it's going to help alleviate some of the pain that the Yankees are going through. Because right now, when you look at the records for the month of July or going back to June 16th, the Yankees have one of the worst records in baseball.
It's terrible. And the only saving grace is that the Baltimore Orioles have simultaneously had their own share of issues. But this is the thing. The Orioles made some moves today. They moved on from Austin Hayes.
And they're not done.
They bring in some pitching help. And they're not done. No, you're right. They're not done. It's an interesting deal when you get the best team in the National League currently making a deal with the best team in the American League. These guys could be looking at each other in the World Series. It's very rare that you see that kind of trade with two first place teams. It's way too early to make a concerted pick, but I'm going to say that at least from my perspective, I believe that the Baltimore Orioles win the trade. But having said that, I don't think the Philadelphia Phillies are going to get too hurt either way. They're adding another bat in Austin Hayes to a team that already features Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, and the great Bryce Harper.
It's, and I think the move was more of a move to send the middle finger out to New York, to the Bronx.
Absolutely.
Because you're right. You don't see him much, but it's not, it's not a first place NL East and first place NL West or NL Central type of thing. It's a AL East, NL East type deal. But really, when you break it down, I mean, all you got to say is 27 championships, and people understand why these kinds of deals are happening, because they still, well, yes, the objective is to win the championship. Second objective is to ensure the Yankees don't.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see it. We've seen it with the Mets in the years where they weren't good. They fed our competition some players. We've seen it. The Mets, speaking of them, I got to give them credit as much as it pains me to say this. They're playing great baseball. A guy that they consistently struggle against, Charlie Morton, they had their way with him today. Yesterday they won on a fly ball. The Mets are doing the little things that win baseball games. They're moving runners. They're being aggressive on the bases. They're not swinging at bad pitches. They're feeling confident. They're working counts. The pitching's been good enough. The Mets picked up Ryan Stanek today from the Mariners for outfielder Ryland Thomas. His ERA is not where it needs to be, but I do believe that he will be helpful for the Mets. I think they're not done either. And once again, to your point about buying and selling, a month ago, they were talking about Alonso might put on an Oriole uniform. A lot of different ideas were getting floated around, but I hate to say it. The two New York teams are trending in opposite directions. And this is the first time, if I'm truly being honest, this is probably the first time since the Mets won the pennant that I can honestly say that they have a legitimate shot of really taking NYC back. But right now, as much as I hate to say it, even though we have a slightly better record, the New York Mets are the best team in New York City right now. It's not the New York Yankees, and that hurts me. It does, but I can't lie on my show.
Oh, dang. Let me send a message to Rich Dorney real quick.
Hey, I can't, and I won't live in some kind of alternate universe just because I'm used to this. The Mariners did pick up Yimi Garcia from the Blue Jays for outfielder Jonathan Clase and catcher Jacob Sharp. That's a low-key decent move. I personally think that the Mariners need more wood to keep up with the likes of the two Texas teams. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, the Mariners need more wood to not only keep up in the West, but they just need it all together because they have the worst hitting average in all of baseball.
Outside of Rodriguez, they don't really have anybody that you're afraid of. I thought the Yankees had issues with that, with the way that they've been pitching around Aaron Judge, taking their chances with Juan Soto. To elaborate on the Oriole deal, Sir Anthony Dominguez and Kristen Pache from the Phillies for Austin Hayes.
I mean, if the Phillies get another All-Star.
Yeah. The Phillies get another All-Star, and the Orioles get guys that you could develop. I like the deal for both teams. I do think the Orioles win the deal, though.
And then going back to the Mariners, I will say the one thing that I think is going to come back and haunt them, and it's already haunting them, is the fact that they did not re-sign Teoscar Hernandez in the offseason as he went on to the Dodgers.
The Red Sox is an interesting one here. This on the 26th. Red Sox acquired left-handed pitcher Big Maple James Paxton from the Dodgers for infielder Moise Bolivar. I hate this. I don't like when former Yankees get traded into the division. And I believe the reason why the Dodgers were okay with making this move, even though Paxton has been decent, not great, but decent, is because they're getting some of their arms back with health. Because the Dodgers, I got to give those guys credit. record-wise, they're not where most people believe they should be, given the talent, but they have been tattered and battered with injuries. Now, Freddie Freeman got dinged up today, too. He's day-to-day, though. It doesn't look like anything too serious, but
they're going to make a move. I mean, we know they're going to make a splash, whether it's going out and getting a Bo Bichette. They're going to go out there and add another bat because they did not invest all this money into Shohei and Yamamoto. Bringing in, of course, we know they brought in Mookie in the past, Freddie Freeman as well. They bring in Tyler Glasnow. I mean, Clayton Kershaw finally pitched his first game yesterday. Like, this team is not done. And quite frankly, when they're not far back from having the best record in baseball now, because now we're getting into the nitty gritty. We're in the final 60 games of the season. And we see them going into Houston today, and Houston blanked them 5-0. So, they know they need to make another move. They know they need to get another bat, especially since Mookie Betts is not there, and we don't know when Mookie's going to come back, if he comes back this year.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee because you got to be able to hold the bat. You got to be able to take the pain off of a vibration of catching a over 100-mile-an-hour fastball. There's a lot to it. You got to be able to flick the wrist, so to speak. It is not easy. One of the hardest things to do is hit a baseball at any level of organized competition. At that level, it's a different kind of thing. Tim Kirchin will tell you all about it. Everybody has their biases about what's the toughest sport to play. But Major League Baseball has 3 layers of minor leagues for a reason. Getting to the show is no small task.
Yeah. As I've challenged many people before, the people that will sit there and say basketball is the easiest or football is the easiest, I say, go pick up a bat and let someone throw 100-mile-per-hour fastball at you, and you try to.
Yeah, velocities are at an all-time high.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Paul Skeens.
Yeah.
This is a guy that's going to be, he's 21. He's going to be throwing 105 to 107.
Did you say he was going to be a Yankee? Did I hear Yankee? Did you say he's going to be a Yankee in 4 years?
Well, you were talking about trading Clay Holmes back. I think the perfect deal is you trade Clay Holmes and you get Paul Skeens and O'Neal Cruz, and that
I should have never typed on socials after that Judge blast. I think I might have jinxed my own team. No, I didn't.
And it's funny because when you did that, there was a Rangers fan I know that had posted something when Adolis blasted his 2-run shot. And then another Ranger fan blasted when we had a runner on the top of the 9th inning. And after the game, I messaged both of them like, this is why you do not prematurely celebrate. You wait till the end of the game.
In my case, I was kind of just saying what was going on. You know what I mean? But I guess I give myself the ultimate pass because I still have the audacity to put my Yankee hat on, say it's be hopeful. Be hopeful. I am disgusted. Beyond disgusted, because this is the second time in 2 years that the Yankees have lost 24 out of 35 games in consecutive seasons after starting off as wonderfully as they did. Last year, I could tell you where it started. It was the Aaron Judge game where Dodger Stadium had to make a change to something structurally that was kind of stupid when Judge messed up his toe. That we won the series against the Dodgers, but that injury derailed our playoff aspirations. The first time in the Aaron Boone era that the Yanks didn't make the playoffs. But I ask you this short and sweet. If you're the New York Yankees, Michael Zappy, and if this season goes up in flames, if you don't win a playoff series, even if you get in, or maybe I'm aiming too low, if you don't get to the ALCS, do you fire Aaron Boone and do you fire Brian Cashman? Cashman put this team together. Aaron Boone is trying to lead these guys.
When you think about basketball, you think about the Lakers and the Celtics. When you think about football, you think of the Steelers, Niners, Cowboys, and now the Patriots. When you think about baseball, you think of the Giants of the past, the Cardinals of the past. You think of the Red Sox today, and you think of the Yankees. The Yankees have set the precedent very high. The only other team in professional sports that even competes with them is the Canadians.
Oddly enough, and it's been so long.
Yeah, and so yes, I think Brian Cashman needs to go more than Aaron Boone because Aaron Boone should have been gone a long time ago.
Yeah, I think that similar to when the Giants got pissed off and got rid of McAdoo and Reese within weeks of each other. They should have just sent them both out of the building at the same time. But having said that, yes, I think it's time, barring a turnaround. Now, Giancarlo Stanton gets reinserted in the lineup. Yeah, that is going to help. But I mean, it's bigger than that.
Look, and let's be real. If you ask me which team would I rather play for / cheer for over the next 10 years between the Orioles and the Yankees, my easy answer is going to be the Orioles because of the simple fact that they are doing this with a very young team.
Indeed. And they haven't even hit their total peak.
They have not.
And that's the ceiling for it is scary. And one thing I want to say before I move it along to the final thoughts that we're going to share here. I don't think we're going to be okay this year. I don't see it. Because even if we make a few moves, we don't have somebody that we trust closing games right now, even though he's an all-star, which I wanted to just punch myself when I saw that. This is a thing that scares me a little. It's not even so much about not keeping Juan Soto, because we knew that when we traded for him, that was a risk that was attached to that. There's a team in Queens right now that's feeling pretty good about themselves.
I don't think
a lot. Do you think there's any scenario where Uncle Stevie steals him from the Yankees, especially if the New York Mets go further this year?
No, I think Soto is very content, not only batting ahead of Judge, but playing in the American League.
And you legitimately think that he really digs being Aaron Judge's teammate?
Oh, yeah. Just watch the two of them play together.
Will the Yankees pony up enough dough to keep him, though? Because you know those guys out west, the Dodgers, are a legitimate threat.
Well, if they don't, then that's when you definitely got to fire Brian Cashman. Because you said it yourself.
Under no circumstances can you let this man walk, no matter how this year turns out.
You said it yourself. Give him a blank check.
I have said it, and I still mean it today, because there's a lot wrong with that lineup. But there ain't a damn thing wrong with number 99, and there ain't a damn thing wrong with number 22. My ultimate optimistic hope is that when Stanton comes back, and with Volpe playing better now, they might have enough to get the train moving, so to speak. Austin Wells, I'm encouraged with. I think he is more than certifying himself as the legitimate catcher for this team now. Jose Trevino had an all-star appearance a couple of years ago, but Father Time is already starting to smack him around. Speaking of Father Time, it's time to get rid of DJ LeMahieu's old ass. I love what he did for this organization, but it's time to move on. We are coming up on the 6.5 minute, 7 minute mark. Zappy, any final thought you want to hit on before we get out of here?
No, I think the main thing I'm going to be watching over the next 72 hours is going to be the deadline deals. What are the Rangers what are they going to do? Are the Astros going to go out there and address the first?
You got to think the Astros are going to try to counter something.
I think they've got to go after Vlad, and we already know the Orioles today said they're going to make Ryan Mountcastle available.
Makes you wonder with them getting rid of the Astros getting rid of Abreu not that long ago if that opens the door for Vlad.
I mean, does the name John Singleton really bring fear into pitchers' eyes? No,
I don't believe so. No.
But if you bring in a Vlad Guerrero into that lineup, that screams, okay, wow. Because that team, I mean, the Astros, let's be real, they had a rough start, but they also had a lot of injuries. Everything's coming back into play. At one point, we were talking about Alex Bregman being traded away. Now we're talking about this team.
Isn't it insane? And listen, I hate those Astros just as much as you do, even though they're not in my division. And I got no love for the Mets, and I got no love for the Red Sox. But I have to tip my cap, and I truly mean this. I have to give some serious, sincere credit to the Mets and Astros doing it with new managers after, one disappointment. In the Astros case, it just looked like the end of an era naturally. And, you have said this. I have agreed with you on this show. that the loss of Dusty Baker was going to affect him, and it did early on. It did. I did not have the Astros recovering this season. They have proved me wrong. I have to give them credit, even though I can't stand that organization. And I want to say one other thing about another team I hate. Alex Cora is a phenomenal manager.
But
there is no but.
But
well, he did something that I didn't really care for.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I want to see what the Rangers do. I want to see if we go out and get another bat. I'm hoping we get Hooker out of the Oakland A's. We've been tied to Yanni Diaz of the Rays as well as Paredes. I don't get it because we don't need infield help. We need another bat and an outfielder. Evan Carter looks like he's going back to California to get reevaluated again. He was supposed to be coming to Frisco to be able to play. Josh Young is getting his rehab work this weekend. He'll be back, but the Rangers need to go out there and get another bat. I would love for them to get one more arm as well.
And that's the thing, man. You're making good points as to why the Rangers should be feeling good. I made a point as to why the Red Sox should be feeling good. The Astros should be feeling good. My team is like smoldering down. Like they are going in the wrong direction at the wrong time. And I'm saying to myself, this could be really epically embarrassing if we miss the playoffs. I'm trying not to panic, but my God, we've been on 60 wins for a while.
If you get swept by the Red Sox, and if they are 2 games back when it's said and done,
oh yeah,
they are going to finish second in that division.
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I would be a fool to disagree with you. I picked the Yankees to win this series 2-1, but I had them winning tonight, and that didn't happen. So we shall see. If there's a small victory, Garrett Cole's not going to face Rafael Devers this weekend because Devers owns his ass.
Oh, he owns him. I mean, if there's one guy Garrett Cole probably has nightmares about, it's Rafael Devers. It's fun. This is when baseball gets good. Football's right around the corner. Oh, and hey, by the way, the Olympics. Today was the opening ceremony. I have to go watch it. Apparently, Gojira put on a hell of a performance in France, but just a lot going on right now, and I get excited knowing that football is back, baseball as well. Deep in, we're getting into the nitty gritty, and we, every 4 years we get to cheer for our country. So USA, let's go!
Absolutely, go USA! I do think that USA basketball men's team is a little vulnerable. Hopefully they get their head out of their arse after almost getting upset just a few days ago.
I mean, they're being led by the guy that has brought 2 bronze medals in LeBron James.
Yeah, that is bananas to wrap my head. But he's the GOAT, supposedly.
Yeah. But Jordan and Kobe were undefeated in the Olympics. Steph Curry undefeated in the Olympics. But
Damn
now
right
Curry
they were.
Might experience his first loss. But no.
Yeah, he's gonna give LeBron that long stare. Like, see what happens when I have to deal with you.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I hope they can, because you should at no point be having to come down to the final second to defeat South Sudan. You should not be struggling to beat a dirt-less Germany.
No.
Especially when you're supposed to have the premier teams, and when one of the players on your team has his citizenship ripped of him because he chose USA over Nigeria, that being Joel Embiid.
Now, let me ask you this. I'm not a mathematician, but 100% is better than 40%, right?
I guess it depends on, would you rather still owe 100% of your debt or 40% of your debt? That's my only caveat to that.
Because one guy that used to wear 23 is undefeated in the finals, where one guy that has worn 6 and 23 is 40% in the finals. Last thought I'm going to say, with the IBF stripping Canelo Alvarez, I'm pissed off because I want the Alvarez fight with David Benavidez, and Alvarez keeps playing around and he's handpicking and he's pissing me off.
He's not going to fight him.
I know, and it pisses me off because even though I don't like Floyd Mayweather, Mayweather gave you that shot when you were still a baby. Do the right thing and fight the guy. For Mr. Mike Zappy, I am Richie Hicks Jr. As always, a pleasure bringing you our show. NFL divisional previews on the way. It's the most wonderful time of the year. We out.